guys, so I'm just going to describe populations, the topic in the By4 Welsh Board syllabus. So these are just a few key terms in the textbook. From the textbook, you have birth rate, which is the reproductive capacity of the population. You have emigration, which is the movement of individuals out of a population. So you can remember it as emigration's got an E at the start, and exits for out. Exit a population also has an E. And you also have immigration, which is the movement of individuals into a population. So I for into and I for immigration. And a population is a group of organisms of a single species interbreeding and occupying a particular area. So a population may be a bee in a beehive because they are of the same species and they are occupying one area, which is the beehive. Curve is S-shaped and it is typical of any new species that is colonizing a new habitat. So at the start of the population growth curve, you have your lag phase, and the lag phase is where the species are getting are adapting to the new habitat. You have little or probably no cell multiplication or growth. It's very slow, and the cells here, microorganisms, are preparing for growth. So there's going to be a lot of intense metabolic activity such as enzyme synthesis. Once the species or the microorganisms have gotten past the lag phase, you have the exponential phase. And exponential phase is where there's a rapid increase in the number of organisms in a given environment. You have more individuals available for reproduction, and the bacterial population can double per unit time. At this exponential phase, which is also known as the log phase, there is no factor limiting growth and numbers continue to increase. So here the birth rate is greater than the death rate. And then you get to the stationary phase. And the stationary phase can be caused when a group of organisms have sort of reached the carrying capacity. And a carrying capacity is the limit the number of individuals in a given area can support. So at this point they've reached the maximum in their habitat and they can't reach any higher than that. And you also have here the death rate equals to the birth rate. Also, there's not much cell reproduction going on. Everything is kind of just leveling off. And then you have here the death phase. And the death phase is where the death rate is greater than the birth rate. And it occurs if there's a shortage of food, buildup of toxic waste. So a lot of density dependent factors here can bring rise to the death phase. Suggest one reason why the bacteria are initially grown in a mini fermenter prior to adding the culture to the industrial fermenter. So this is from a June 2008 By4 Welsh Board paper. And the answer is to minimize the lag phase, or to allow bacteria to adapt to conditions. So, environmental resistance includes all the factors that may limit the growth of a population. For example, predation, food, parasitism, disease, overcrowding, competition, toxic waste, and weather also. So it's a range of stuff that can cause either the stationary phase or the death phase. Density dependent factors are factors which are dependent on the population size. So the effect increases as the population size also increases. For example, toxic waste will increase as a population increases, disease increases as the population increases, and depletion of food supplies will also decrease as a population increases. So, density independent factors are factors which don't depend on a population size or a population density. For example, abiotic factors such as random weather, like violent weather patterns, like freezing, flooding, or fires. So all plants and animals can be affected by this, but they are not the cause of these density independent factors. So populations do tend to fluctuate in numbers. In general, the size of a population is regulated by the balance between the birth rate and the death rate. For a given species in a particular environment, there is a certain equilibrium population that the environment can support. So, the numbers of most species will lie near an equilibrium known as the set point, which is here. If the population was to rise above the set point, you would have an increase in competition and raised environmental resistances. So this will create a fall in the population back to the optimum population size. And if you have a decrease in the population, which is lower than the optimum population, you have a decrease in competition and predation, lowered environmental resistance, and increase in population to get the population back to your optimum population size. So basically, it's a negative feedback system trying to bring back the equilibrium back to the set point, if that makes sense. So if the change is an increase in the number, you'll have a decrease, an opposite effect of a decrease in the population to bring it back down. And if the change is a fall in the population numbers, you'll have an opposite effect of an increase in the population numbers. So basically, you want to keep your population close enough to the set point. So population sizes do tend to fluctuate on a regular basis, and this may be because of weather, or such as heavy rainfall or temperature. So in nature, plants and animals have to struggle to survive. Plants will compete for light, space, water, and nutrients. However, animals will compete for reproductive partners, space, shelter, and food. There are two types of competitions in nature. You have intraspecific competition and interspecific competition. Intraspecific competition is competition within members of the same species, and this will allow for the best adapted animal to survive. A good way to remember intraspecific competition is intra and the intranet within an organization. Interspecific competition is competition between members of different species. A good way to remember this is the internet, inter for internet, and the internet is between organizations.